I was about to, I was trying to write down a whole bunch of notes to keep this video really short. And I realized I'm not that person. So everyone's leaving all these social platforms, or they're rebellious, kind of sticking it to the man kind of situation. And they're thinking, and rightfully so, trying to stand up and stand in their power. And the way to do that is to not feed the dragon, any longer. But I think I have another way. So we just left. Today is the Chinese New Year of the wood snake, and pardon me, I have a cold, and it's been quite the adventure. But anyway, we left the year of the dragon, and so now we're in the wood snake, which is it's feminine, and so it's yin, and so that energy that we are learning about and trying to apply, especially come February 1st, today's January 29th, 2025, and a new moon. And so now we're trying to go into a more feminine approach, but it's in the sense of fighting still, fighting against something. When I say stick it to the man, that's still fight, it's still a rebellious quality of, I have something to prove. And yes, logically we do, but I find the most rebellious thing that you could possibly do is your own self-care and your own happiness. And I've been in practice of pretty much a big majority of my life, as much as I've been conscious to it, of where anytime I really want to enact change, I enact it within my own self, not to change my environment or the outside of me. So everybody's trying to abort, and trying to say, well, if we pull out, then we're like I said, we're not feeding the monster. We're allowing it to starve out. And I do really believe that is a very wonderful, great way to not necessarily disempower, but to dismantle the hierarchy and the pyramid scheme that we've been living, under. But there's a quote by Albert, and I can't remember what exactly it says, but it's something. It talks about how your happiness could be the most rebellious quality that you can have. I'm not like friendly terms with Albert or something, but just using his first name. I just don't know how to pronounce his last name, if it's Camus or Camus or something like that. So here's an example of my own ways of doing things that I do not think other people necessarily have to do. I shut off my TV. In 2004, we drove to Alaska, and we were so enamored by the lack of social, not even social engagement, because Facebook wasn't even around then. But the lack of digital. Granted, we lived in the mountains of Colorado, and had a remote job, so we never went to town. So we were coming from already an off-grid lifestyle, and then went further off-grid, which we adored and loved. So we came home, we immediately shut off our TV, so there was nothing but static. And this is in a world where we are both, we work on online platforms, and before there were online platforms, and we work in the digital era. So it was very challenging. It wasn't necessarily easy. We watched a lot of DVDs on Northern Exposure. I love that show. Anyway, it was something that was really monumental for me. And of course, I would talk about it and share it. I never thought other people should do it necessarily, but I definitely promoted it of what it did for me. But here's the catch, is that it worked for me. It's not going to work for other people. A lot of people, if they don't get their news, if they don't listen to the news, that makes them feel unstable. It makes them feel completely vulnerable and unsupported. For me, it does the opposite of effect. But do get my news in other ways so as I can research it or do things like that. Another thing that I do is I buy used the majority of the time. From not necessarily clothes. I do all my kid clothes usually used, but all my household stuff, all my furniture, most things come secondhand. Why? Because I like it. It doesn't mean you have to also. I just do what resonates with me. And I feel like our society has been starting to go, because we've been so oppressed, from this condemnation and censorship, especially over, everybody else except the white man, then we tend to fight. And so we're fighting against something. And the way to fight, the only way that we know how, is to fight back. And I think that is kind of missing the point. That is not, really the wood snake energy of that yin energy. That's not what it does. It doesn't mean that it's passive. It just means that it's not, woman with two fists kind of situation. So when we want to get more natural, get in our more natural state, I would really, really ask you to do inquiry for yourself. So there's a lot of fads out there, and it's not just diets. There's a lot of fads of like, okay, now we're all doing this, and now we're all gonna go and get off social media. Like for instance, right now, we're gonna all go onto other platforms or no platforms, or hey, I've seen a lot of people say, just message me, and stuff like that. And I thought that was very interesting, and I thought also my reaction is very interesting to that, because I use especially specifically social platforms for a very different way than most people use them. So here's the big question that you ask yourself with whether it's social platforms or TV, or how people are saying, oh, well, I'm getting off Amazon Prime. All these, basically it's all our what we think of as addictions. Many times it's not an addiction, but it can be, when it's always too much of something. But we tend to lump in a convenience as an addiction. And I know for me, it's actually not. It's a joyful convenience. So here's the big question. Are you being used, or are you using it to work for you? I'm going to give you an example. When I go on Facebook, let's say, because I'm above 35, 48. So I'm the Facebook candidate of what, my age group usually goes and does. This is my social network. So this is, to me, the equivalent as when I go into my close-knit communities. Do I hole up, or do I communicate and do events and do one-on-ones and relate and share and offer myself, Yeah, I usually do those things, instead of holing up. Sometimes I do hole up, and that's really great for me also. I actually love to do that. But it's a balance for me. So most people, when they go on a social media platform, they are being used by it. This is why most times when you ask people, do you have any grievances about being on, let's say, Facebook? And they will go on and on about how much they hate it, And to me, when they say that, all I can think of it is you're being used by it. You are not being responsibly using that platform. I go on to Facebook to connect with people, and connection isn't about liking or even talking too much about myself. It's about a communication of whatever's going on. But most importantly, it's about sharing my vulnerability. And this is something I think most people miss. Most people think of me as being a very open person, and that as if I'm extroverted in that, oh, Vanessa just likes to do that. It's not necessarily that I like to do that. It's that I'm compelled to do that. And I'm compelled to do that because I believe that to relate to somebody else, to make that real deep connection, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. Most people are not vulnerable on social media, ever. And that's for their own protection. But for me, I've done so much work because of being so feeling unprotected, and that there's no boogeyman. There's nothing that people could say the worst things to me, and I am not going to take them on as if something's wrong with me. Most people don't do that. Most people believe them. Don't believe them. You know? So your vulnerability is super, super, super important. It doesn't mean you throw yourself to the wolves, okay? You do it in a safe place. You don't share really vulnerable information for people who won't support it. You need that support. You need that sounding board of love, not opinions or advice. For me, I know that I could get that not just on social media. So if I go and give that out to the world and sharing my vulnerability, I share it not as an opinion piece. You know, I share it as this is my life, and there's not really room for what other people feel about that, except if they're sharing a Me Too experience. I just try not to have expectations on how people should respond. And therefore, I can still be who I am and express myself and not be devastated by it. This still takes me tons of work and tons of practice, but I welcome that. I also found blocking people works really great. That's my love language. So the other thing is notice where there's shame. And, you know, shame is, you know, directly tied to our own guilt, to be honest. So when people shame of like, I always believe everything is balance. So I don't believe anything is bad. So let's say, you know, kind of like everybody in the culture that is more earthy, we'll call it, crunchy. So there's a lot of shaming of like, oh, well, I don't want to be on social media, or social media is like the devil, you know, or screen time is really bad, or they're just trying to get back to nature, which is great. And I fully 100% support it. I actually talk about it, live it, am it, you know, of constantly trying to get back more and more to our natural state of being, you know, which a lot of that is obviously limiting screen time and so forth. But the problem is that, again, we're putting this in a bigger way instead of recognizing that maybe there's balance even to that, because we are modern day. We're not, it's not everything that comes new, let's say technologically or whatever, any advancement that comes new has a pro and a con, but it's not all cons. It's just how we use it. Again, is it using us, or are we using it responsibly? So it's the same thing with eating, you know, like there was always so much hype from the 80s, 90s, you know, onward. It was like, what are you eating? Oh my gosh, well, this is the way to eat, and blah, 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 blah. And I've learned through my own personal, you know, triumphs and failures, and through, you know, and through doctors and through holistic measures and all these other things, none of it matters. It just doesn't matter. It matters only for you in what you think about it. So the inquiry that you're doing is, what do I believe about that? Because it's my beliefs that are creating the chaos, that are creating the discord, that are creating the uncomfortableness and the disassociation, the body whatever it is. It's our beliefs about that. For instance, I want to be able to have, let's say, screen time and have no effects from it, because maybe I do it once, 1 hour a day or whatever. It doesn't matter the limit, but I want to be adaptable. This is what our number one goal should be, is so adaptable that nothing affects us, whatever, how amazing or how horrible it is, because that's a belief system, that it doesn't affect us in that way. I want to be able to not have to ground constantly and earth and do my sun salutations and courting. I want to be able to be okay if I miss a couple days or whatever. That's what I'm working towards. I'm not working towards health, that there's something, because that's a belief that something is wrong with me. Okay. And this is what our entire humanity is so caught up in right now, that there's something wrong. and we're constantly searching for something wrong. And so it's just kind of like people who are, oppressive, that's something wrong. And it's just like, what if we just took our attention off of that? What if we recognize that what is right? And then you put all your attention into what is right. Okay, well, I'm not gonna be going and getting Amazon Prime every day or whatever. You should see my cart. I have like tons of things in my cart waiting because I try to group them together. So it's like, that's what the natural state, and that comes out of joy. It doesn't come out of guilt or trying. You shouldn't be trying. The only thing that you should be reaching for is joy. That's it. Okay, so it's Albert Camus. Obviously, thank God I looked it up. And it says, the quote says, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. So your act of existence, your being, that is the rebellion. So it's like, that's what I'm talking about, of being in joy. It is so, so, so important. So if it brings you joy to be off of Facebook, please, for God's sake, get off Facebook. You know what I'm saying? For some other people, like me included, that is not my joy. This is my outreach. This is how I connect with people. I don't connect in other ways that they might. So I just feel like if we don't blame or shame or do that for anybody else but ourselves, I think that's really the best thing that we could do for planet Earth, and really just share your joy of what works for you, and that it will definitely not work for other people, but just sharing yourself and being in that beautiful space. I hope we can do that more often.